Two, one.
One, lift off.
Hey, we're back from a really long hiatus, right? The holidays.
We've had a long break.
We have.
With my being sick and you being busy and your stuff and my stuff
And
and
the
hi
holidays
everybody.
and
Yes,
everything,
we're
right? Yeah.
thrilled to be back. Finally back. So, Al, why don't you begin?
But Rosemary, I think welcome to Everything is Attitude, and as an example of what we're talking about tonight, we could have after sometimes a long break, you can give up on things, right? And say, hey, that was fun while it lasted, but we persevere because
We
we enjoy doing
persevere.
this, right? we we enjoy doing this.
Not
Um,
everybody likes that we persevere, but we persevere just
we
the
do.
same, right? Oh God, not them again. Do I have to really watch this again?
And we persevere. We've talked about this just from even the at the base level. This show, we've all had those days during the days that we do the show that are absolutely busy and nonstop. And but we persevere. We do the show because we love it, and we hope that everybody else enjoys it as well. And it's good for us, but hopefully it's good for everybody as well.
We actually, the truth of the matter is, Al, that we do this often, although we haven't done it for a few weeks because of Christmas and New Year and all the rest of it. But it is true for all of you listening that Al and I often get together and we can chat for an hour or two or something like that. And so all we're doing is we're doing it publicly. We're doing exactly what we do, but we're doing it publicly, right?
And hope that people like it, right?
Well, hey, it's like, welcome to my home, welcome to my life. That's basically
That's
what
exactly
it
right.
is. So, yes, it really is. Hi to everyone. It really is great to be back, and it's great to be with my lovely co-host Al Pisano, and of course I am Rosemary Altea. You all knew that really anyway, didn't you? And tonight our topic is about perseverance. Um, sometimes we can have perseverance for the things that we love to do. For instance, if you love to cook, or if you love to do sports, or if whatever it is that you really like to do, it's very, very easy, isn't it, to persevere and to go through things. For instance, if you're on a hike or you're doing a 3 mile marathon, not a 3 mile marathon, a marathon or something like that, it's very easy to persevere in those times. When I say easy, even if you have to slog through it, because it's something that you actually want to do and you've chosen to do it. And so, despite the backache when you're making a chicken salad, as I was this afternoon, despite having to deal with the pain in my back, I persevered and finished the chicken salad, and then I sat down and rested my back and so on and so forth. So that's sort of the simple things of persevering are, because we choose to do them, that it's easy to do. But what about those things situations that we encounter in life um, that we don't choose, but yet they require us to persevere and to work through those situations or not. Again, it's all about choices, isn't it?
It's
But it's
all about attitude, right?
yeah, but attitude. But as many people have heard me say, and Al has heard me say trillions of times, it's easy when it's easy. If you're doing something that you choose to do, even if it's tough, it's easy because you chose to do it. So it's easy when it's easy, but it's not so easy when it's something that you don't choose to do, something that you've been thrust into, something that you had no intention of being a part of, or a situation of having to persevere uh, because it's the only thing you can do when it's for someone else. If you have to persevere because someone else needs you or someone else requires your help, you're more likely to persevere, I think, than if it's something that is personally going on with you. You know, it's how do we adjust or adapt or get the required attitude to persevere through the tough times, through the difficult times, through the times when we're involved in things that are not our choice. And I think that there are so many situations that people come across in life where literally they're doing things which are simply not their choice, and the only choice that they have is to persevere or to simply give up. So, Al, why
And I
don't
think
you?
I think it varies too. That perseverance you mentioned, like sometimes it's personal, Rosemary, where you have to persevere. Um, Weight loss is one that may not
Oh
be
yeah, oh yeah,
may not be dangerous right away, or maybe versus like a terminal illness or something that could be terminal, like a cancer. Like I think people vary personally whether they persevere or not based on the severity or perceived severity of whatever it is coming at them. And then there's also that perseverance, like you said, when you have to persevere for others, when you have to help people get through things and be strong and persevere in that regard. So it's that internal perseverance. That's something that's going on with you, but there's also
like the
I
dieting thing.
yeah, and I don't know which one's easier. I think it depends on like for myself, it's my I've been going through with my son Justin. I think that I persevere more with that versus maybe another situation with a friend of mine or so. Like it may vary from one instance to the other. Just thinking out loud.
I think,
Not
yeah,
sure.
I think I'm not even sure if it's easier or which is easiest, because I think different situations call for different types of perseverance. But as parents, you and I, and for the people who don't have children but who have animals, you persevere on behalf of someone you love or someone you care about, and particularly if it's your children or someone in your family who you value, you will persevere for their sake. And although it isn't necessarily easier to to have that perseverance, it is easier to be determined that you will persevere because it's for your children. And sometimes it's difficult because there are situations like you are in, and I know you're going to talk about that in a minute. But you persevere, you persevere, you persevere, but sometimes you don't know uh, what to do. You don't know which is the best action to take, which is the best way to, should I persevere in this direction or that direction? Sometimes there are situations, especially when it's with our children, you feel so helpless, but the perseverance comes in making sure that you are by the side of that child, supporting that child, and supporting what is going on. And also, I think as parents, uh, uh, myself with my patients as a healer, I will persevere as an advocate on someone else's behalf, often much easier than I will persevere on my own behalf. So why don't you talk about your situation, Al, and a little bit tell everyone about your situation, because
So
I
yeah,
do believe that people look at us, they see us doing this show, they see us smiling away, we're laughing, we're happy, we're joking, and people think, well, it's all right for him or her. I've had through my entire life, I've had people say to me, people who don't know me or haven't read my books or what have you, well, it's all right for her, she was born with the silver spoon. Now, actually, I was born with a rusty spoon, and it wasn't silver. you, you know what I'm saying? But people look at us and they think, well, they've got it together, and they can talk about this stuff because they know and they've got it together and they've done it. But I think that it's very helpful when people see that we are human and that we are going through, even at this moment in time. Al, you're sitting there, you're smiling, you're happy, you want to do this, you want to talk about this. You're going to talk about a subject which is difficult for you to talk about, I know,
yep.
but I think it's really, people do value when they see people like you and I who are going through stuff and they can relate to us, but also they can be inspired by us as well. So go. Now I'm not going to interrupt you.
Yeah, and knowing too, like for myself, it's continual growth. It's like ripping the band-aid off, figuring it out, patching back up. It's a continuous path like that, and honestly, I'm grateful for that in a lot of ways. Like it's I'm never going to get it right, and I don't know that maybe some people out there will get it perfectly, but I think that process, reflecting and just growing, I think is good, really good for the soul, and I'm happy to be on that path. Um, for myself right now, the situation that we're in is my son Justin actually has it's actually an autoimmune disease, and I didn't know much about this before. It's called Crohn's disease, and he also has potentially celiac. And in the past, I have to say I was guilty of this. I always thought Crohn's was not that big a deal because I didn't know much about it. And I think because it has to do with the bowels, it's probably not talked about much because we don't talk about taboo subjects here in America, at least, or very rarely do. So
We talk about things like that all the time.
yeah,
But anyway, go ahead.
we're too uptight here in America to talk about those things. For the most part, some people do, but for the most part, we're as a society we're uptight. Um, but it so happens that Justin he's at 14 years old and he has Crohn's disease. And what Crohn's does is it's very painful and it's an autoimmune disease. So he has a lot of inflammation from his esophagus down through his intestines. And what that does for a normal person that's not 14, it would make them really difficult for them to eat without having to go to the bathroom. But what it does for a 14-year-old boy is it's very tough for him to absorb any nutrition, really. So what it's done for him is it's inhibited his growth. He has the potential or is able to grow, but he's not getting enough nutrients no matter what he eats. He's not getting enough nutrients. So just to put it in perspective, he's 14 years old. He's under 5 feet tall and he's 73 pounds. So if anybody has a 14-year-old child, whether girl or boy, to be 73 pounds at that age, especially for a boy, it's very low. And he's on the cusp and has been for a while of being malnourished and potentially hospitalized. So we as a family, and him especially, is going through this. And even before this call, hey, what are you in the mood for? What do you have the appetite for? What has calories? What has nutritional value besides the calories? So it's this constant battle in a way because he doesn't have an appetite. He's not feeling the greatest, but he needs calories. And how do we get that to him? And what do we give him that won't upset his stomach, but will give him the nutrients he needs so that he doesn't end up hospitalized? So it's really been challenging. And he's been to more doctors than a kid his age should ever have to go to. And he's in constant pain. He's unsure of potential treatment that they may give him, which are these infusions. So it's been a challenge. But like you mentioned, as a parent, and I think most parents would do this, some probably not, but as a parent, like there's I don't see any other choice but to persevere for him. But it doesn't go without challenges. It's not, because you can't say, "Hey, we're good. We persevered today. We're good tomorrow." It's like
continual,
it's a continual, continual. You have to be. We talked about being relentless. You have to be relentless in that persistence to persevere every day. Like it can't stop until he's somehow out of this. He's hit his growth spurt. As he gets older, maybe he manages it a little different way with more natural things. But for now, we are not even out of the hole that he's in. We haven't even started climbing out, although we have some potential solutions. We haven't even started climbing out of that. So there's no end in sight as far as perseverance goes. There's no end in sight, and that's fine. That is what it is. But
But now, if I can just sort of step in for a second here, and just to say that there are so many people no matter how much they might love their children, there are so many people who would struggle with perseverance. There are so many people who think the doctor knows best. So therefore, they go along, they listen to the doctor, they do what the doctor tells them to do, and it's very difficult for some people to understand that. And you know, that white coat of the doctor, that's all, that's the authority there, and a lot of people are intimidated by that. So I'd like to talk about that part of it in a little bit too. But now, can you tell us, um, because not only are you persevering, and I think it's very important for people to know and to understand, and I mentioned it earlier, I have always been my own advocate, but I've also been an advocate for my patients, and I'm certainly an advocate for my daughter. And my daughter's been in hospital numerous times and gone through some really painful experiences, difficult experiences. And I'm fortunate that I've been able to do this. I have always been by her side, and I've always watched the nurses and the doctors with hawk eyes. I have listened, and that's the key thing. I think I have listened to what they've said, and I have questioned them and said, hold on a second here, because I don't believe that if a doctor tells you something, that that doctor is necessarily right, nor necessarily wrong. But I do believe that there are some doctors who have vision, you know, there's a tunnel vision, and there are some doctors who are willing to sort of look at the broader picture, a wider picture. And I think it's if you're going to be the advocate for a child or for a patient, as in my case, for anybody at all, for your mother, your father, whoever, I think it's important that you always look for a doctor who has a wider vision and who listens to you. Can you tell us, give us one or two examples? Because I know you've been from doctor to doctor to doctor to doctor to doctor to doctor to doctor because you've not been satisfied with what they've prescribed, or you've not been satisfied necessarily with what they've had to say. You've also done an enormous amount of research, and a lot of people aren't necessarily capable of doing the same research. You're in that research environment
Right. Right.
work-wise. You've always been, you know, since you left school, you've always been in that research environment,
Right.
right? That educational environment. But a lot of people don't quite know how to do that, but we want to tell them that they can do that, and it is possible for every one of us to do that, and to not be afraid of challenging the doctor or the caregiver or the person who seems to be in charge, the guy with the white coat and the stethoscope or whatever it is. Can you give us some examples, Al, of the kinds of mentioning no names, but the kinds of um, let's say, obstacles, hurdles that you've had to sometimes leap over and sometimes climb over with a struggle, as far as the medical profession is concerned, as far as doctors, as far as some of the advice that you've been given, which is good, and some of the advice that has been given that is absolutely not good at all. Can you?
So I'll start out by saying this, Rosemary, and I think you know this as well. My inherent nature is not to make ruffles, not to make waves. So for me, and for anyone out there who says, "Oh, I can't do that," that's not my inherent nature. When I first started student teaching, I was sick every night before and anxious and nervous because I had to face a classroom of middle schoolers the next day. And that would go on for my entire student teaching. So inherently, I'm not one to just say, go, go, go and do this. But
It's not your natural inclination to challenge.
exactly. But I have learned over the years to be able to do that in a calm way. More, you know, when I was younger, maybe not so calm all the time, but now I can do it in a very calm way. And I approach doctors especially, and I actually, um, make decisions on whether to stay with doctors or not on this, knowing I don't know. I do my research, but I don't know everything, and I will question doctors if I see a gap in what they're saying or inconsistency in what they're saying. I'll pick up on it pretty quickly because I've been doing this a while. But I will question doctors, and if they have an adversarial reaction to that, that's a red flag for me because I want to know that they are okay being questioned. Because if they're okay being questioned, that means that they're okay looking past that, like you said, really,
Having a wider picture.
having a wider picture. Exactly. So what
And
we
I do think with the medical profession, I think what makes a good doctor, a good nurse, what makes a good caregiver is the ability to be able to listen to what another person is saying and not to just dismiss it because you know best. Because if you find a doctor, a nurse, a caregiver who doesn't listen or just sort of appears to listen but then overrules or overrides what you're saying, you're dealing with arrogance. And
right.
arrogance does not make for a good caregiver, in
because
my
because
opinion.
well, it doesn't, because they'll miss something, right?
Yeah,
Because they're so set in their beliefs, and that goes for anyone, anywhere, right?
yeah,
If you're so set in your beliefs, you're not seeing everything around you, all the input and people around you. Then you're going to get stuck. But we're talking, speaking of being persistent with this, uh, we wanted nothing more than to find a doctor for Justin that was the right doctor on the first go, right? And hey, this is
uh-oh,
we found
well,
we found this doctor, and this doctor, he or she knew what she was talking about, treated him the right way, knew what the diagnosis was and how to treat it. And we could have settled and said, hey, the first doctor, maybe they're not great, but we'll stay with that doctor. But we were at both Christine, my wife, and myself, and Justin tolerated it because Justin's very good at it as well. We talked, hey, what did you think of that doctor? And sometimes it took a couple visits, but we switched doctors on multiple occasions, switched back to an original doctor. Um, and so much so that I go into the doctors now and I say, listen, we've dumped X number of doctors because of XYZ. I said, and this past doctor, I said, show me that you're different than these other doctors. I said it to him right away, this doctor that we're with now that we like. And he was fine with it. And within the first 10 minutes, this doctor knew more than all the other doctors, knew exactly how to treat Justin, joked around with Justin, listened to Justin. Justin felt good about the doctor, which is really important too. If you have a kid going through this stuff, ask them how they feel about the doctor. We ask Justin every time. He's very good instincts, and he's a really sensitive kid, and he's a smart kid. But even that, like, we're not going to dismiss how he feels because in the end, he's the one that's getting treated by these doctors, and he's pretty spot on with each of the doctors. And he'll say, hey, they're good, but they don't seem like they know as much as they should, or I don't understand why they said this. Like, he's very good with that. So listen to even the people that you're with. Don't dismiss them because they're just part of the process too. So we've hopefully found a doctor now that is aggressive in treatment and understands the
you want
urgency of this. And
you want someone who's aggressive in their treatment because the gap, the his age, you're limited in I'm sort of I've got uh to,
yeah, we're good with that.
yeah, have you got the notice as well from Chris? Sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
uh so, so yeah, so what was I saying? So when a doctor will say, for instance, oh, we'll try him on this, or whether it's to Justin or whether it's whoever it is, oh, we'll try this treatment and give it a couple of weeks, but if it doesn't work, we'll try something else. My inclination then is to pull back because I am not a guinea pig. I do not want to be a guinea pig. I always ask the doctors, what side effects does this particular thing have? I'm very aware of what any drug will do to my body. I'm very fortunate in that, I mean, well, it's perseverance as well. My back has been out for weeks. I've rarely taken pain meds because I'll just, if I rest and settle, I'm fine. I'm in no pain. It's when I actually get up and start to walk about that there's an issue. But I'm very aware that, you know, when you put stuff in your body, you need to know what it is, and you need to know what it's going to do to you. And I think you had some instances here, Al, where you had doctors who would just say, "Oh well, let's try, give him this and try this for a."
Well, I had one doctor that actually said that a particular drug would help him, and then I asked the same doctor about the side effects of that drug, and he didn't know what the side effects were.
Really?
And I said this to the doctor. I said, "So you know that he should take this, but you don't know the side effects of him taking this?"
Well, then I hope you got out of there really pretty fast.
Yes, exactly. He was
Because
somewhere along the line.
if a doctor is prescribing you something, they really need to know about it. They really need to know what that drug does. Because what are they? They're just making guesses, then, aren't they? It's just pure guesswork. So don't. So my sort of the what I'm trying to say to everyone out there who's listening to this: don't allow yourself to become a guinea pig for doctors who are just testing out theories without real knowledge of what it is they're talking about. I also don't want to give people the impression that we're against the medical profession, because I can hold my hands up and say, if it weren't for the medical profession, I would not be here now. So I owe a great deal, my life, in fact, to the fact of, sort of all of this amazing stuff that doctors can do and can give to us.
And there are a lot of amazing doctors, but
Yeah.
as far as it's part of perseverance, and you said it's easy when it's easy, especially, and if you can imagine like what, and people are going through far worse things with their children than I am, but if you could imagine um, legitimate concern for the health of your child, and still having to persevere through what is really perceived as an authority figure in society, right? A
Yeah.
doctor is telling us
Well,
what
the doctor
to
said
do
so. Hey, well,
because the doctor said so.
yeah,
So
yeah.
we, for us to be to it, we have to persevere through. Hey, all right, he or she is the doctor. They do have a lot of experience and knowledge in this area, but we have to sort of fight through that and say the ultimate thing for us is to make sure that Justin gets the best care that he needs and be resolute in that. And it's not easy to do, because the easy thing to do is say, all right, this doctor seems like they're pretty good. Let's leave it in his or her hands. And then that's pressure off of us. That's less we have to persevere. That's one less thing we have to be concerned about. When we do find the right doctor, and hopefully this is the right doctor now, there's some relief in that, but we still can't let our foot off that pedal, right? We still have to keep pressing on that gas,
You're
even
the advocate. You've got
yeah.
to be the advocate.
And that's the true, like, being truly relentless and persistent is understanding that there may be like these breaks in how much you have to push forward, but you can never stop the wheel from moving. Essentially, right? You have to keep that wheel moving, even if it slows. You can't let it stop, because then you don't know what's going to happen, and something bad, especially with health of your child, something bad can happen when you become passive in a way, and just kind of become a passenger. You can't do that. uh, Unfortunately, persistence is not that. You have to be relentless in your persistence in a way with a lot of
And
situations.
I think you have to be brave. You
Yeah.
have to be unafraid to ask the questions. And that's not just of doctors, it's of any authority figure. The taxman, we all tremble with the taxman, instead of standing up to the taxman and saying, well, I don't know quite how you've come to this. Can you explain it to me? I mean, you've got to, and it's easy. If you're a person who, I don't know that I'm a naturally brave person, but I've always been a person who I've never encouraged a fight, but I'm I've rarely shied. I won't say never because I can't remember, but I've rarely shied away from standing up and being counted and doing and trying to do the right thing, or supporting somebody who I feel is being maligned, or a victim, or what have you. I'll be the first one to step up, and there are people like that, but it's those other people who don't necessarily have that ability. They're shyer, they're more timid, or they have been taught from a very young age the authority, when the authority figure says so and so, then therefore they are right. And not that I don't want to move away from you and Justin's story, but I do want to give an example of a situation that happened to me personally years and years ago, way before I had Samantha. And I had several miscarriages before I had Samantha, but there was one time I was actually pregnant, and then, I started to bleed this particular day. So we call the doctor, oh, put yourself to bed, so on and so forth. And a doctor who was sort of on call came out, and he looked at me and examined me, and he examined me in a way that was going to cause harm, if nothing else. Anyway, he said to my husband, he took my husband to one side, and he said, she isn't pregnant. This is obviously a phantom pregnancy, and you've got to just be very firm with her. Okay, so for about, I'm going to say, a good 4 or 5 days, if not a little longer, I was in absolute agony, and my parents-in-law and my husband were brutal to me. They were brutal. You're being ridiculous, that, stop being silly, there's nothing wrong with you, all this sort of thing. And this one particular night, sort of after a few days of this and having awful stomach cramps, and shoving aspirin down my throat like it was going out of fashion, I remember sitting on the sofa, and I was in so much agony, and surely it must have shown on my face, but because that man in the white coat had said there's nothing wrong with her and it's a phantom pregnancy, and she's, you've got to be firm with her, I'm sure he didn't mean you've got to be cruel to her. But some people take that as an opportunity to really say you're being ridiculous. So I sat on the sofa, and I was in so much pain. I doubled over, and I literally fell on my knees. And my husband is sitting there saying, "You're just being ridiculous. You're being stupid. Just stop it." Blah, blah, blah. I crawled across the living room, and I crawled on my hands and knees up the staircase. How I made it to the bathroom, I don't know. And my husband's voice is coming behind me saying, "The doctor says there's nothing wrong with you. The doctor says there's nothing wrong with you. Just being right." Until I got to the bathroom, and to cut a story very short, miscarried on the floor of the bathroom. The embryo was there, the blood was there, everything was there. It was a nightmare. And it was obviously, you sort of formed enough, you could see that it was a baby. And my husband walked into the bathroom, and I'm just at this point sitting on the floor, very faint. And he said, the first thing he said to me was, "I'm going to clean this up." And I remember losing it, absolutely losing it, because they'd been telling me, my in-laws and my husband, for 5 days, "There's nothing wrong with you." And here it is on the bathroom floor, all because a doctor said there's nothing wrong with her, and just be firm with her, and so on. And I wouldn't let him clean it up until a doctor came and looked and said, "Yes, she's had a miscarriage," all over the bathroom floor. And anyway, they took me to hospital. But so, that was a good lesson to me as well. It was a really good lesson to me. Just because a doctor says so doesn't mean it's so. So never be afraid. Never be afraid. You're not challenging for challenging's sake. You want to know. You want to know what why are you prescribing this, or why do you think that, or can you explain this to me a little bit more? Don't be afraid. The doctor is human too. And and the doctor might be going through all sorts of things themselves on a personal level, and might not even be focused fully on you and what's happening with you. So don't be afraid, right, Al? Don't be afraid to question. But what advice would you give to those people who are going through this awful situation, where they're in a position that they have to stand up, and they don't know how they're going to do it? Can you tell
So
us what you would say to them?
so I think this applies to being persistent in really anything you do. I liken it to everybody's had those days where they are doing something back to back to back, and they almost you don't have time to even think about what you're doing next, right? You're just so busy, you're going from one thing to the next to the next. And persistence, and we talk about attitude and your mindset, right? And persistence is kind of a choice to do that, right? Like if you have sort of like what we have is this what's next attitude, and not acceptance of what is, and hey, what's next. I think that's the most productive advice I could give to people, whether it's trying to forge a new path in your career, or like you can't look back and say, oh, well, this didn't happen, so I don't know what to do now. And you can't get caught in your own thoughts in your mind. Like you have to have that attitude of,
And it is easy. It is easy when things are not going right. Like, how many doctors did you try? And
yeah,
you must have thought, how many more have I got to try? There must have been several times throughout this process that it would have been, had it been for yourself, I'm sure you would have given up. You would have not been so persistent, but because it's for your son, but how what advice would you give to those people who have to climb over that hurdle of, I can't do it, and he knows better than me, and I can't, well, I couldn't, possibly question, and so on. What advice?
honestly, to keep it simple, don't overthink it, and don't get caught on the stuff you can't control. Accept what is, and then decide what your next step is. And that, if you do that, I think you can get through almost anything, because it's the thoughts and the reflection and the cycling around that spiral we talk about, that negative spiral. That's what stops you from progressing or getting through things. If you know, and being an advocate for your child is an easy one in my mind, because we can't, like for Justin, I can't do anything about his situation, and we may not be able to ever do anything about his situation and what he is, and with his, or it may get better at some point. So I can't focus on that, and I mean, it would keep me up every night. And some nights,
You can't focus on more than one step at a time, right?
that's it.
You
That's
can't focus
exactly
on the
right. Yeah,
future. You got to just focus on getting through today, and then getting through the next day. Each day is a new day, and
that's it.
you've just got to persevere through that one day. If you
And
think,
it's the
oh
old,
my gosh, this is going to take
yeah,
years, I've got to
exactly.
persevere the next.
And it's that old, you've heard it with so many philosophers. You don't live in the past, live in the moment. And yet, like, it sounds great, but like in real life, there's truth to that. Not that you shouldn't learn from the past and understand what happened, and make informed decision based on what happened, but for the most part, dismiss all of that stuff and just do what you need to do to get to your whatever goal it is, whether it's losing weight.
One step at a
One
time.
step. That's it. One step at a time. And I am reading this one book, and the author cites a lot of research on, even like we talk about negative and positive attitude. He says it's great to have a positive attitude, but if you look at every case study of like successful people and whatever they do, the biggest differentiator is that they take action on whatever it is they want to achieve, and they don't get caught up in those thoughts that kind of stop them from doing it.
Now I do have to point out very briefly, because I'd love to go. I don't know if we have any comments from people or
We do have
anyone.
comments, yeah.
So, um, but I would like to point out that for an earth sign, as I am, and we're talking soul signs now, not the horoscope, but
As I am too, different earth sign, but I am too.
so for an earth sign, we are, in the whole of humanity, earth signs are the action takers. We are
Right.
the thinkers and we are the action takers. An air sign is so difficult to just allow, just to float and so on. So if you're an earth sign, you are going to be inclined to take the actions that are necessary, but to persevere through those actions, because we're the warriors, we're the fighters of the human race. That's what we do. But for an air sign, for a person who is maybe reluctant, for a water sign, maybe someone who is reluctant to rock the boat and wants to find the compromises in life, there are times when it's right to compromise, but as earth signs know, sometimes there is no compromising, and you can't compromise your own health, and you can't compromise the health of your child by just wanting to please, or wanting to be silent, or wanting to not rock the boat, right?
Exactly.
what
And
what would you advise for people who are naturally the ones who will stand back and say, well, I could never do that?
so what, even as an earth sign, I have conversations with you to help me through and to say, hey, listen, don't tolerate that. My wife is a water sign that will just kind of go with the flow for anything. But she has me in her ear saying, no, we have to question this. No, we have to question that. Depend on those around you too a little bit, and ask, and
Right.
see what they think. Ask them to
But
push you a little bit, motivate, right?
perhaps to find someone who is encouraging you to be the person you need to be in this particular situation, to encourage you to be the advocate.
and
Let's
and
hope.
and, and trust in that, right? If you're,
And trust it, yeah,
yeah,
and to trust it, yeah.
yeah,
I mean, you're fortunate in that you got me to bounce off of, and I'm fortunate I've got Grey Eagle to bounce off of. We all need someone to bounce off of from time to time. So if you're not, or you feel that you're not sure as to whether you could do something like this, find a person who is strong and tough, not bullying or pushing or confrontational just for the sake of it, but someone who will basically stand up and help you say, hold on a minute, I need these questions answered, in a nice way, in a polite way. But if it doesn't work in a nice way, in a polite way, then you know what to do. You go find someone who will listen to you and who will answer the questions that you have. What comments? What do
so
we have
we have
going on here?
Sharon says hello, Annie says
Hi, Sharon.
hello. um, Sharon says, after my husband died, I had to decide to move forward with my life and persevere. I take work, but it's it takes work, but it's worth it. Loss is something that you really have to persevere through, depending
Oh,
on
yeah.
the severity of
And
that
it's
loss.
also so very easy to give up.
Yes, yes, it is, and live a lifetime of giving up.
Yeah.
Sometimes. Uh, my father and Annie says my father and husband both died 2 years apart, and she just wanted to hide, but it couldn't. I had to do so much to do. Busy helps you persevere. It does. Sometimes if you don't have a choice, you keep moving, right?
You know what they say? If you want something done, ask a busy person.
Yeah.
Because the busy person is always going to be the one who finds the time to do what's necessary. And idleness just gives you so much time to think, and that's not always a good thing. So yes, keeping busy, I think that's a great ingredient for
Ingredient. Yeah.
pot. Yeah. Be brave, be busy, be be determined, and find the courage that you need, even if you can't find it for yourself. If you're an advocate for someone, as all parents are for their children, be an advocate for the one you love.
And
Find the courage to do that.
take action on that, right? Take action.
Action,
Yeah.
taking action, all, yeah, always. Anything
We
else?
have
Anything else we got?
Sharon. My grandson has juvenile diabetes and celiac. He was diagnosed at 6. Now he's 18. It's common for dual diagnoses with children. Yes. Violet, please. Uh, of recommending a documentary to watch, talking about the healing power of foods. We're going to check that
Hi,
out.
darling. Hi, Violet.
It's called Super Juice. So if anybody wants to watch that on the value
It's a
of food,
video.
it's a video on YouTube. We haven't watched it, so let's just say that. But we trust Violet.
Super juicy, yes, but Violet knows what she's talking about. So
Yes, we trust Violet. So
yeah,
yes.
we do. We
Uh,
do.
Annie says very difficult for him and all of us going on through it as his family. Debbie says light and love to both of you. Sharon again, always question doctors and advocate for your loved ones. Doctors forget they work for you. Very well said. Not the other way around. That is
And
true.
they do forget. They do forget.
They do. Yes. Annie, I think said, oh my goodness," when you were talking about your miscarriage and what you went through there. And
But
she,
it taught me a lot. It taught me a great deal. So, I mean, when we talk about these things and how you with Justin, we seem so reasonable about it, but the pain and the heartache that goes on is right there as well. But don't let the pain and the heartache stop you from learning. Do not.
don't let it consume you, right? Don't let
Yeah,
it consume you.
don't let it get you. And Michelle said, we were talking this morning on the show this morning, and Michelle, my assistant, said, because she's 5'1", she's a tiny little thing, and she said, my mother said that God says we stop growing when we're perfect. That when we stop growing, it means that we're then perfect. So we never want to stop growing because none of us are perfect, really. We want to not necessarily grow, physically, but we do want to grow in a spiritual way. So never think that you've reached that point. And this is a really good advice for all of those caregivers out there and for all of those people who are in a position of authority. Don't ever think you know it all, because there's always something else to know, there's always something else to learn, and there are always ways to grow. And being open and being embracing the openness and embracing new knowledge is a way of growing and learning.
There's no way we could learn everything in one lifetime. Just not.
No, not at all, not at all. Any other comments?
Yeah, we have Maggie asked if she's a day off on this. Yes, you're not a day off.
Yes, Maggie.
You're
We're a
not a
day
day
off.
off. We are doing it a different day. We're trying something new. Rosemary and I want to continue to do this, so we adjusted a little bit to get it done, mainly because of my schedule, I'll say.
It's
But
always your schedule. We always have trouble with your schedule, and you think that I'm not nearly as busy as you are.
I did never said that.
That actually might be true.
I did not say that. I never assumed
I know you didn't say it. No, I'm teasing. I'm teasing.
Annie says she's an earth sign here. Debbie says serenity prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I can't change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Yes,
Excellent.
and that is a great thing. Yeah.
Debbie also says don't be afraid to ask for help, and Maggie says as a water sign, tsunami happened. I don't know what she means, but that's what she said there. So that's it. A lot of comments though.
That's good. We're really glad you found us. Yes, it is not Friday. Anybody thinking that it's Friday? What are they doing? I've got the days mixed up. It is Thursday. We do have to bring this to a close. Al, do you have any final thoughts or anything else? Any other advice that you'd like to give to anyone?
No.
So we thank you all for watching. Al, you need to post this as soon as you get off because you neglect.
I have not been persistent in that for sure.
No, well, I'm going to be persistent in now forcing you to post. But anyway, you can find this on YouTube as soon as Al's posted it, or you might have to wait for Michelle to get to it in 6 weeks' time when she looks back and she sees that we haven't posted it. But you can, where can you find it? Facebook and YouTube.
Facebook and
We'll put
YouTube.
it up there. And if you feel that what we have said tonight helps someone else, please share, because that's what we like to do. So thank you to my co-host Al Pisano. If you want to know more from Al, if you have any advice or help that you, especially if someone's watching this and you've been through the same thing, I'm sure I would appreciate your help
Absolutely.
and comments. So you can email him, al@alpisano.com, or you can also do info@everythingisattitude.com, and he'll be able to find those emails. If you need to know any more from me, or you have any topics that you'd like us to discuss, or you'd like to be a guest on our show, Al's being our guest tonight. If you'd like to be a guest on our show, if you have something to talk about, you don't have to be in camera if you don't want to be, although you can if you do want to be. Please email me, rosemary@rosemaryaltea.com. In the meantime, I definitely will see you again next Wednesday afternoon at 1:30 when I do my Hands Around the World healing. I give healing exercises, and I tell some lovely stories. You can find all of that on YouTube as well if you'd like to look. And I should do my Thursday morning show, The Spirit World Sees All. That's at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and the healing sessions will be at 1:30 Eastern Standard Time on Wednesday. So it's Wednesday and Thursday. And are we going to attempt to do Everything is Attitude next Thursday as well, Al, again? Or
We are, yes. I think
we're really going to try and do that, and we'll let you know. If you want to be on my email list, please, you have to write and ask to be put on the mailing list, and then we'll let you know when whatever it is we're doing, and when we're doing it and how we're doing it, right, Al? In the meantime, please, thank you for joining us. Please have a very blessed rest of the day, and have a very blessed weekend. And we'll see you next time.